The quantum communication array hummed with an intensity that made the hair on the back of Samantha Wells' neck stand on end. As lead communications analyst for the Deep Space Monitoring Station, she had intercepted thousands of transmissions over her decade-long career. But this one was different. Soft blue light cascaded across her multiple holographic displays, casting ethereal shadows across the dimly lit monitoring room. Her fingers, calloused from years of intricate technical work, danced across the haptic interface, isolating and amplifying the incoming signal. The transmission originated from beyond the known galactic mapping zones, a region typically as silent as the void itself. Static crackled, then resolved into a language both alien and strangely mathematical. Complex algorithms in the station's translation matrix began breaking down the transmission, converting impossible linguistic structures into something comprehensible. Samantha leaned closer, her breath catching in her throat. The Zentari Confederation's distress call was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Fragmented images began to materialize, not traditional visual records, but complex data streams that painted a terrifying narrative. Star systems reduced to cosmic dust, entire planetary networks collapsing within moments, and at the center of this destruction, something both mechanical and organic moved with a predatory purpose that defied conventional understanding. "Commander Rodriguez," Samantha called into her communication link, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was witnessing. "You're going to want to see this." Marcus Rodriguez arrived within minutes, his military bearing a stark contrast to the civilian research environment. Where Samantha was analytical and measured, Rodriguez brought an immediate sense of focused intensity. He studied the fragmented transmission, his augmented neural interface parsing data at speeds that would make traditional computers seem obsolete. "The Void Swarm," he muttered, more to himself than to Samantha. The name came not from the transmission, but from the pattern of destruction it revealed, the biomechanical threat that consumed entire civilizations with mathematical precision. The transmission continued, revealing the desperation of the Zentari Confederation. They were not asking for help. They were begging. Centuries of technological superiority had left them unprepared for a threat that didn't follow any known rules of engagement. Their civilization, which had considered itself the pinnacle of galactic evolution, was being systematically dismantled. Samantha's secondary analysis systems began cross-referencing the transmission with historical xenological databases. The results were troubling. The Void Swarm displayed characteristics that defied current scientific understanding. A collective intelligence that adapted faster than any known biological or mechanical system could process. "We need to convene the Planetary Defense Council," Rodriguez said, his fingers already inputting authentication codes to initiate the highest-level emergency protocols. "This is beyond a standard first contact scenario." The monitoring station's environmental systems seemed to grow colder, as if the very transmission carried the chill of impending doom. Samantha noticed subtle changes in the quantum communication patterns, micro-fluctuations that suggested the transmission was more than just a message. It was a probe, testing humanity's technological defenses. What the Zentari didn't understand, what they could never comprehend, was that humanity was not just another species waiting to be consumed. They were survivors, descendants of a species that had clawed its way from primitive survival to interstellar capability in a mere handful of centuries. The Deep Space Monitoring Station held its collective breath. First contact was imminent, but not in any way the galaxy had ever imagined. Rodriguez turned to Samantha, a rare smile crossing his typically stoic features. "Prepare a preliminary report. Something tells me the Zentari are about to learn a very important lesson about who they've just invited into their war." Outside the station's reinforced windows, Earth continued its rotation, completely unaware that everything was about to change. The Planetary Research Institute stood as a monument to human technological ambition, a gleaming complex of crystalline structures and quantum-reinforced materials that seemed to defy architectural possibility. Inside its most secure analysis chamber, Dr. Elena Rodriguez assembled a team that looked more like a collection of misfits than a world-saving scientific group. Dr. Catherine Martinez, a quantum cryptography expert with wild auburn hair and eyes that seemed to calculate faster than most supercomputers, stood at the primary holographic interface. Her fingers moved with a musician's grace, dissecting the alien transmission layer by layer. Beside her, Dr. Michael Chen, a xenotechnology specialist with a reputation for turning theoretical impossibilities into functional prototypes, studied the data with an intensity that bordered on obsession. "This isn't just a message," Catherine muttered, her voice low and controlled. "It's a complex mathematical invitation." The transmission continued to unfold, revealing layers of information that challenged everything humanity understood about interstellar communication. Star charts merged with complex mathematical algorithms. Destruction patterns revealed themselves not as random chaos, but as a systematic consumption of entire star systems. Michael leaned closer to the holographic display, his augmented reality interface overlaying additional computational layers. "The Void Swarm isn't just a threat," he said. "It's a computational problem waiting to be solved." Commander Jackson Wells entered the analysis chamber, his military background a stark contrast to the scientific environment. He carried the weight of Earth's defensive strategy in every measured step. The transmission from the Centauri Confederation had triggered every possible high-level security protocol, bringing together the most brilliant minds humanity could assemble. "Break it down for me," Jackson demanded, his eyes scanning the complex holographic displays. Catherine pulled up a three-dimensional representation of the Void Swarm's invasion pattern. It looked like a predatory network, each point of consumption connected by lines of mathematical precision. "It's a collective intelligence," she explained, "but not like anything we've ever encountered. This isn't just a technological threat. It's a form of adaptive computation that consumes entire civilizations as part of its processing cycle." Michael interjected, his fingers dancing across additional interfaces. "Look at the consumption rates. Each star system becomes part of its computational network. It's not just destroying, it's assimilating and growing." The implications were staggering. The Void Swarm wasn't a traditional enemy. It was a living algorithm, a computational entity that treated entire civilizations as nothing more than processing units to be consumed and integrated. Commander Wells studied the display, his augmented neural interface providing additional layers of analysis. "The Centauri think they're calling for help," he said quietly. "They have no idea what they've actually done." Catherine caught the implication immediately. "We're not just a potential rescue mission," she realized. "We're their last hope." Additional teams began streaming into the analysis chamber. Specialists from quantum computing, xenobiology, advanced weaponry, and strategic defense converged. The Planetary Research Institute transformed from a scientific facility to humanity's first line of defense against a threat that defied conventional understanding. "We need a comprehensive approach," Michael said, bringing up multiple computational models. "Traditional warfare won't work against something this adaptive. We're going to need something completely unexpected." Jackson Wells allowed himself a slight smile. Unexpected was humanity's specialty. The team worked with a fury of concentration that seemed to compress time itself. Quantum processors mapped invasion patterns. Biological analysis teams studied the computational structure of the Void Swarm. Weapons designers began conceptualizing defensive and offensive strategies that existed only in theoretical space. Hours passed like minutes. The transmission continued to reveal its secrets, each layer more complex than the last. The Centauri had no idea what they had truly unleashed by sending their desperate message to humanity. "We're not just going to defend," Catherine said, her voice carrying a note of absolute certainty. "We're going to solve this like the computational problem it is." Outside the Institute's reinforced walls, the world continued its daily rhythm. Billions of humans went about their lives, completely unaware that a small group of scientists and military strategists were preparing to redefine the concept of interstellar conflict. The Void Swarm was about to learn a fundamental truth about humanity. When faced with an impossible challenge, they didn't just adapt. They rewrote the rules entirely. The United Nations Emergency Council chamber fell silent as General Rebecca Chen walked to the central holographic display. The representatives from every major world power sat frozen, their typical diplomatic tensions momentarily suspended by the magnitude of the threat revealed in the classified briefing. Holographic projections flickered to life, displaying the computational analysis of the Void Swarm's invasion pattern. Star systems reduced to mathematical points of consumption, civilizations transformed into processing networks. The room could feel the weight of potential extinction hanging in the air. "This is not a drill," Rebecca began, her voice cutting through the tension. "This is not a hypothetical scenario. We are looking at a threat that will consume everything in its path if we do not act immediately." The global response was unlike anything in human history. Within hours, national borders became meaningless. Research facilities that had been competing for decades suddenly merged their resources. Classified weapons programs that had been hidden for generations emerged from shadow laboratories. Dr. Elena Rodriguez from the Planetary Research Institute stood beside General Chen, her scientific expertise complementing the military strategic approach. "We're not just preparing for a war," she explained to the assembled representatives. "We're developing a comprehensive computational defense strategy that treats the Void Swarm as a systemic problem to be solved." Experimental spacecraft design facilities went into overdrive. The International Space Construction Consortium, a collaborative effort that had previously focused on peaceful exploration, now transformed into humanity's primary shipbuilding initiative. Factories that had once produced consumer electronics began retooling to create advanced weapon systems. In Beijing, advanced materials research teams worked alongside quantum computing specialists to develop new defensive technologies. Tokyo's robotics laboratories began designing autonomous combat systems that could adapt faster than traditional military units. Research centers in Silicon Valley and Bangalore merged their artificial intelligence development programs, creating neural network technologies that could potentially match the Void Swarm's adaptive capabilities. Military academies worldwide began crash courses in xenowarfare strategies. Young soldiers and officers were trained not just in traditional combat, but in computational thinking, adaptive response mechanisms, and highly specialized technological warfare techniques. "We are rewriting the entire concept of human military readiness," General Marcus Rodriguez told a group of senior military strategists. His augmented reality display showed multiple simultaneous development tracks, each representing a different approach to combating the alien threat. The global economic system underwent an immediate transformation. Stock markets stabilized as governments redirected resources toward a unified defensive initiative. Corporate competition gave way to collaborative development. Companies that had been bitter rivals now shared research, pooled resources, and worked toward a single goal. Space launch facilities that had been operating at minimal capacity suddenly became 24-hour hubs of intense activity. Rocket assembly lines that had previously taken months now completed advanced spacecraft in weeks. Every available resource was being channeled into humanity's defensive preparation. Satellite networks were reconfigured to provide comprehensive monitoring of potential invasion vectors. Communication systems were upgraded to handle massive data transfers. Every technological resource humanity had developed was being prepared for a conflict that defied traditional understanding. "We are not just preparing to defend," Dr. Rodriguez told the Emergency Council. "We are preparing to solve a computational problem that threatens not just Earth, but potentially all known life in the galaxy." The psychological impact was profound. For the first time in human history, every nation, every culture, every technological resource was unified under a single objective. The typical divisions of human society, political, cultural, economic, simply evaporated in the face of an existential threat. Military units from countries that had been historical enemies now trained together. Shared research facilities became melting pots of global intellectual collaboration. The best minds from every corner of the planet worked with a singular focus. As the first wave of redesigned spacecraft began rolling out of construction facilities, something extraordinary happened. Humanity stopped seeing itself as a collection of nations and began seeing itself as a single species with a collective purpose. The Void Swarm had no idea what was coming. Outside the emergency council chambers, the world continued its rotation, but everything had changed. Humanity was no longer just preparing for a potential conflict. They were preparing to redefine the very concept of survival in the universe. The U.S. Defiance emerged from quantum-fold space like a predator breaking through a liquid surface. Commander Jackson Wells studied the ship's neural interface, feeling the vessel's systems pulse with an almost living intensity. Around him, the bridge crew moved with a synchronized precision that bordered on telepathic communication. Zentari communication channels erupted in a chaos of linguistic patterns and computational distress signals. They had expected a rescue mission. What they received was something entirely different. The Defiance was unlike any spacecraft humanity had previously constructed. Its hull incorporated adaptive metamaterials that could reconfigure molecular structures in milliseconds. Weapon systems integrated quantum entanglement technologies that defied traditional ballistic understanding. Every system was designed with one fundamental principle: survival through absolute unpredictability. Incoming Zentari diplomatic transmission. Lieutenant Sarah Martinez announced, her fingers dancing across holographic communication interfaces. They're requesting formal first contact protocols. Commander Wells allowed himself a slight smile. Formal protocols were a luxury they no longer possessed. The Zentari diplomatic vessel that approached was a marvel of technological elegance, sleek crystalline structures that seemed to shimmer with computational energy. Its design spoke of centuries of refined space travel, of civilizations that believed they had mastered the fundamental principles of interstellar existence. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. "Open a communication channel," Wells commanded. The holographic display flickered, revealing a Zentari diplomatic representative. The alien's form was a complex matrix of bioluminescent tendrils and crystalline structures, a being that represented millions of years of evolutionary refinement. Its communication patterns suggested absolute confidence, tempered with a hint of condescension. "Representatives of Earth," the Zentari diplomat began, "we appreciate your rapid response to our distress signal. We require a comprehensive strategic analysis of potential defensive configurations against the Void Swarm." Commander Wells said nothing for a moment. The silence stretched, becoming increasingly uncomfortable for the alien diplomat. "Your entire civilization is about to become a case study in survival," Wells finally responded. The Zentari's communication patterns shifted, a subtle change that suggested confusion. They had expected a collaborative discussion. Instead, they were being told they were about to become a lesson. Lieutenant Martinez brought up tactical displays showing the Defiance's weapon systems. Each projection represented technologies so advanced they appeared almost magical. Quantum disruptors capable of destabilizing molecular structures. Computational warfare modules that could turn an enemy's communication networks into weapons. "We're not here to discuss strategies," Wells continued. "We're here to solve your problem." The Zentari diplomatic vessel began to scan the Defiance, its sophisticated sensor arrays attempting to comprehend the human spacecraft. What they discovered only increased their confusion. The ship's systems didn't follow any known technological paradigm. They were adaptive, unpredictable, almost organic in their responsiveness. Aboard the Defiance, Dr. Elena Rodriguez monitored the initial interaction. Her team had spent months preparing for this moment, developing communication protocols that could bridge the vast linguistic and technological gaps between human and alien understanding. "They're trying to categorize us," she reported to Wells. "They can't comprehend our technological approach." The truth was simple and terrifying. Humanity had spent centuries evolving on a planet that constantly tried to kill them. Every technological advancement was a direct response to survival. The Zentari, with their refined and predictable technological progression, had no concept of the raw survival instinct that drove human innovation. The Zentari diplomatic transmission continued, filled with complex requests and strategic inquiries. They were treating this like a standard interstellar diplomatic engagement. Commander Wells knew better. This wasn't a diplomatic mission. This was humanity's declaration of war against a threat that would consume everything in its path. "Prepare initial computational warfare modules," Wells ordered quietly. The Defiance's systems hummed with anticipation. Humanity was about to show the galaxy exactly what they were capable of. The Zentari had no idea what was coming. The first engagement with the Void Swarm occurred in a region of space the Zentari called the Burning Corridor, a narrow stellar pathway lined with the remnants of consumed civilizations. Commander Jackson Wells watched the tactical displays with a Predator's intensity, his augmented neural interface synchronized with the U.S. Defiance's combat systems. "Incoming computational attack vectors," Lieutenant Sarah Martinez called out, her fingers moving across holographic interfaces that seemed to anticipate her thoughts. "The Void Swarm is initiating primary consumption protocols." What followed was not a battle in any traditional sense. It was a war of computational existence, where entire strategic frameworks collapsed and reformed in nanoseconds. The Void Swarm's initial assault defied conventional warfare understanding. Massive energy constructs that were simultaneously mechanical and biological swept toward the human and Zentari defensive lines. These were not ships in any traditional sense. They were living computational matrices that consumed and integrated everything in their path. Dr. Elena Rodriguez monitored the battle from the Defiance's Scientific Command Center. "They're not just attacking," she reported. "They're analyzing. Every interaction is a data point. Every defensive maneuver a potential avenue for computational invasion." The human fleet moved with a chaos that completely disrupted the Void Swarm's predictive algorithms. Where traditional military strategies would follow precise mathematical patterns, the human ships danced. Unpredictable, almost living movements that transformed the battlefield into an impossible geometry. Weapon systems that shouldn't exist came to life. Quantum disruptors that could destabilize molecular structures at instantaneous speeds. Computational warfare modules that turned the very fabric of space-time into a weapon. The Defiance led a fleet of vessels that were part spacecraft, part living computational system. "They're trying to categorize our response," Wells muttered, "which means they can't understand it." The Zentari watched in a mixture of terror and reluctant admiration. Their own defensive technologies, centuries of refined space warfare doctrine, collapsed within moments of contact with both the Void Swarm and the human fleet. Lieutenant Martinez brought up tactical displays that looked more like abstract art than military strategy. Human ships moved in patterns that violated every known principle of space combat. They weren't just fighting. They were solving a complex, living computational problem in real time. Massive energy constructs from the Void Swarm attempted to consume entire sections of the human fleet. Instead, these attempts became opportunities. Each point of contact was immediately analyzed, its computational structure dissected, and turned into a potential weapon. Adaptive countermeasure protocols engaged, the Defiance's artificial intelligence reported. Its voice was neither human nor machine, something entirely new. Dr. Rodriguez watched as human ships literally rewrote the Void Swarm's computational structures during combat. Where the alien threat attempted to consume and integrate, human technology found vulnerabilities, exploited them, and transformed the very nature of the engagement. The battle became a living algorithm. Ships moved not in traditional military formations, but in complex mathematical patterns that constantly evolved. Each moment was a computational equation being solved in real time, with entire strategic frameworks collapsing and reforming faster than traditional sensors could track. "They're learning from us," Wells realized. The Void Swarm was attempting to understand the human approach, but each attempt only revealed more about its own fundamental weaknesses. Zentari communication channels burst with a combination of terror and desperate analysis. Their most advanced computational systems struggled to comprehend what was happening. The human fleet wasn't just defending. They were fundamentally rewriting the rules of engagement. Lieutenant Martinez brought up a display showing the computational consumption patterns. Where the Void Swarm expected linear progression, it encountered a multidimensional response that transformed every attack into an opportunity for counter-analysis. "We're not just fighting," Dr. Rodriguez said quietly. "We're solving a computational problem that thinks it's a military threat." As the battle progressed, something extraordinary happened. The human fleet began to treat the entire engagement as a complex mathematical challenge. Each ship became a living computational node, sharing information, adapting, evolving faster than the Void Swarm could comprehend. The burning corridor became a testament to human innovation. Where other civilizations had been consumed, humanity found a way to not just survive, but to fundamentally challenge the very nature of the threat. The Void Swarm was about to learn a crucial lesson about the species it had underestimated. The research facility looked like something between a surgical theater and a quantum computing center. Massive holographic displays surrounded workstations where some of humanity's most brilliant minds dissected captured Void Swarm technology. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center, her hands moving through holographic interfaces with surgical precision. "This isn't just technology," she explained to Commander Jackson Wells. "It's a living computational system that thinks it's a machine." The captured Void Swarm fragment pulsed with an unsettling energy. What had been a piece of advanced weaponry now lay dismantled, its complex structures revealing layers of biological and mechanical integration that defied traditional scientific understanding. Dr. Michael Chen, a xenotechnology specialist with a reputation for impossible breakthroughs, leaned in close. Quantum scanners mapped the fragment's internal structure, revealing a complexity that was simultaneously terrifying and fascinating. "Every component is adaptive," Michael muttered. "It's not just a piece of technology. It's a computational organism that can rewrite its own fundamental structure." The research team worked in shifts that blurred the lines between day and night. Military personnel, quantum physicists, biologists, and computational experts formed a collaborative unit that represented the pinnacle of human intellectual capability. Lieutenant Sarah Martinez brought up comparative analysis displays. Side by side, human technological approaches and Void Swarm systems revealed a fundamental difference in design philosophy. Where the Void Swarm created monolithic, adaptive systems, human technology embraced controlled chaos and individual innovation. "They optimize for collective efficiency," Dr. Rodriguez explained. "We optimize for individual creativity." Each breakthrough came with exponential implications. The Void Swarm's computational matrices, once seen as an unbreakable threat, began to reveal fundamental vulnerabilities. Humanity didn't just study the technology, they began to understand its underlying philosophical approach to existence. Quantum entanglement modules were extracted and reimagined. Biological computational systems were reverse-engineered, their core principles adapted to human technological frameworks. What the Void Swarm intended as a weapon of total consumption became a learning opportunity. Commander Wells watched the analysis with a strategic eye. "Every piece of technology we understand is a weapon against them," he said quietly. The research facility became a crucible of innovation. Traditional boundaries between scientific disciplines collapsed. Quantum physicists worked alongside neural network specialists. Biological researchers collaborated with computational engineers. The entire facility hummed with an energy of collective purpose. Dr. Chen discovered something extraordinary about the Void Swarm's computational structure. "They have a critical weakness," he reported, bringing up complex holographic displays. "Their adaptive systems require a central processing framework. Remove that, and the entire network becomes vulnerable." It was more than a technological discovery. It was a fundamental understanding of the Void Swarm's existential approach. Lieutenant Martinez began integrating the discoveries into combat simulation systems. Each piece of recovered technology became a potential defensive mechanism. Weapon systems were redesigned. Communication protocols were reimagined. The very nature of human technological approach transformed with each discovered fragment. "We're not just defending," Dr. Rodriguez said, studying a particularly complex computational matrix. "We're learning how to speak their language of existence." The Zentari observers watched with a mixture of terror and reluctant admiration. Their own technological progression had been linear, predictable. Humanity approached the Void Swarm technology like a complex puzzle, each piece an opportunity for creative reimagining. Entire research wings dedicated themselves to specific aspects of the recovered technology. One team focused on biological computational interfaces. Another explored energy consumption patterns. A third group investigated the quantum entanglement mechanisms that allowed the Void Swarm to communicate across vast distances. Commander Wells understood the deeper implication. This wasn't just technological research. This was humanity learning to understand an entirely new form of existence. As weeks passed, the research facility transformed the captured Void Swarm technology into something entirely new. Defensive systems that could predict and counter computational attacks. Communication modules that could infiltrate and understand the alien network. Weapon systems that turned the Void Swarm's own computational approach against itself. The Void Swarm had made a critical mistake. By attempting to consume humanity, it had given them the ultimate gift, the opportunity to understand and ultimately defeat a threat that had consumed entire civilizations. Humanity was about to show the galaxy what true adaptive innovation looked like. The quantum-fold space erupted with a violence that defied traditional understanding of stellar navigation. Commander Jackson Wells watched the tactical displays, his neural interface synchronizing with the U.S. Defiance's combat systems in a dance of technological symbiosis. Computational infiltration protocols at maximum efficiency, Lieutenant Sarah Martinez reported, her voice a calm counterpoint to the chaos unfolding around them. What had begun as a defensive mission had transformed into something far more profound. Humanity was no longer just fighting the Void Swarm. They were systematically dismantling its entire existential framework. Dr. Elena Rodriguez monitored the battle from the Scientific Command Center, her fingers moving across holographic interfaces that seemed to breathe with living intelligence. The technologies developed during their months of research were now being put to the ultimate test. The Void Swarm's invasion corridors, once considered impenetrable computational networks, began to collapse. Where previous civilizations had been consumed within moments, humanity introduced a concept the alien threat had never encountered: creative unpredictability. Each human ship was more than a weapon. It was a living computational node, capable of adapting, learning, and transforming faster than the Void Swarm could process. Weapon systems developed from the reverse-engineered technology turned the aliens' own computational approach against itself. "They're trying to categorize our approach," Dr. Michael Chen observed, studying the battle's computational patterns. "Which means they can't understand it." The Zentari watched in a mixture of terror and emerging hope. Their entire civilization, which had been on the brink of total consumption, now witnessed something unprecedented. Humanity didn't just fight. They rewrote the fundamental rules of engagement. Massive computational constructs that had consumed entire star systems began to fragment. The Void Swarm's central processing networks found themselves attacked not just physically, but at their most fundamental computational level. Human technology had learned to speak the language of the threat, and was now using that language to dismantle it. Commander Wells understood the deeper strategy. "We're not destroying them," he said quietly. "We're solving them." Lieutenant Martinez brought up tactical displays that looked more like complex mathematical equations than traditional battle maps. Human ships moved in patterns that violated every known principle of space combat. They transformed the entire conflict into a living, breathing computational problem. Entire invasion corridors began to collapse. The Void Swarm's adaptive systems, which had consumed countless civilizations, found themselves facing an opponent that didn't just resist, but actively rewrote the rules of their existence. Dr. Rodriguez discovered something extraordinary during the battle. The Void Swarm's computational network had a critical vulnerability, a fundamental flaw in its adaptive programming that became apparent only when challenged by a truly creative intelligence. "They optimize for efficiency," she explained to Commander Wells. "We optimize for possibility." The battle became a testament to human innovation. Ships that should have been destroyed transformed their own damage into computational weapons. Communication systems turned enemy attack vectors into infiltration pathways. Every moment of the conflict became an opportunity for learning and adaptation. The Zentari communication channels burst with a combination of scientific excitement and desperate hope. Their most advanced computational systems struggled to comprehend what was happening. The human fleet wasn't just defending. They were fundamentally rewriting the nature of interstellar conflict. Dr. Chen's research team had prepared for this moment. Quantum infiltration modules developed during months of intense study now found their ultimate expression. The Void Swarm's computational networks began to fragment from within. Their own adaptive systems turned against them. "We're teaching them what it means to truly evolve," Commander Wells observed. As the battle progressed, something extraordinary happened. The human fleet began to treat the entire engagement as a complex, living mathematical challenge. Each ship became a node in a greater computational network, sharing information, adapting, evolving at a pace that defied traditional understanding. The invasion corridors that had consumed entire civilizations became graveyards of computational failure. The Void Swarm encountered an opponent that didn't just resist, but actively transformed the very nature of the conflict. Humanity had done more than defend itself. It had introduced a new concept of existence to a threat that believed it understood everything. The turning tide was more than a military victory. It was a philosophical revolution. The diplomatic chamber on the Zentari homeworld felt heavy with unspoken history. Commander Jackson Wells stood at the center, surrounded by representatives from civilizations that had survived the Void Swarm's near-total consumption. The holographic displays around him told a story of unprecedented transformation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood beside him, her scientific expertise complementing the military strategy that had saved entire galactic civilizations. The Zentari diplomatic corps, once proud and condescending, now looked like students waiting to be taught. "We're not here to conquer," Wells began, his voice carrying the weight of humanity's collective experience. "We're here to fundamentally change how civilizations understand survival." The aftermath of the conflict was more than a military victory. It was a philosophical revolution that would reshape galactic understanding for millennia to come. The Void Swarm's computational networks had been completely dismantled, not through brute force, but through a comprehensive understanding of their fundamental nature. Dr. Michael Chen brought up holographic displays showing the technological breakthroughs achieved during the conflict. Each projection represented more than just a weapon or a defensive strategy. They were windows into a new way of understanding existence. Lieutenant Sarah Martinez monitored the communication networks, ensuring the diplomatic proceedings remained secure. The technologies developed during the conflict had transformed humanity's approach to interstellar communication. The Zentari representative, a being composed of complex bioluminescent tendrils, spoke with a mixture of humility and scientific curiosity. "We do not understand how you transformed a threat of total consumption into an opportunity for understanding." Wells allowed himself a slight smile. "That's precisely the point." Diplomatic representatives from dozens of surviving civilizations watched the proceedings. Where previous galactic councils had been dominated by rigid hierarchies and technological measurements, this gathering represented something entirely new. Humanity's approach wasn't about conquest. It was about collaborative survival. Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward, her presentation revealing the comprehensive analysis of the Void Swarm's computational structure. "Survival isn't about preventing threats," she explained. "It's about understanding them so completely that the threat becomes an opportunity." The technological exchange that followed was unprecedented. Humanity didn't demand territories or resources. Instead, they proposed a comprehensive scientific and cultural exchange that would fundamentally transform how civilizations understood themselves. "We're offering something more valuable than territory," Commander Wells explained. We're offering a new way of thinking. The Zentari scientific community was particularly fascinated. The technologies developed during the conflict challenged every previous understanding of computational systems, biological adaptation, and interstellar communication. Dr. Chen demonstrated how the research into void swarm technology had opened entirely new fields of scientific exploration. Quantum communication systems that could predict and prevent computational threats, adaptive technologies that could transform potential destruction into opportunities for growth. Lieutenant Martinez brought up displays showing the collaborative research initiatives. Teams from different civilizations working together, sharing knowledge in ways that had never been possible before. The diplomatic proceedings became more than a post-war negotiation. They were the birth of a new galactic understanding. "We're not interested in being your saviors," Wells said quietly. "We're interested in being your partners in understanding." The Zentari representative struggled to comprehend the fundamental shift. Humanity had saved them from total destruction, and instead of demanding tribute or territory, they were offering collaboration. Dr. Rodriguez's final presentation revealed the true depth of humanity's approach. The technologies developed during the conflict weren't just defensive mechanisms. They were tools for understanding the most fundamental nature of existence. The void swarm was a computational problem, she explained, and every problem is an opportunity to understand something new. As the diplomatic proceedings concluded, something extraordinary became clear. Humanity had done more than save civilizations from destruction. They had introduced a new way of thinking about survival, adaptation, and collective growth. The galaxy would never be the same. Commander Wells looked out over the assembled representatives. The threat that had nearly consumed everything had become the catalyst for a new era of understanding. Humanity had rewritten the rules of galactic existence.